M&S is not only the maker of Olivia Rigo's favourite sweets, as we heard earlier, it's also one of my favourite business stories during my time as editor. In the 2010s, it was the high street stalwart that fell from grace, indeed out of the FTSE 100. Archie Norman, chair, 1 year into his role, called it a burning platform in 2018. But then the turnaround began. The burning platform was extinguished and a new one was created. And a spectacular turnaround ensued. 12 consecutive quarters of growth, improved profitability and market share gains. And as Helen's just said, the crowning achievement, Marketing Week's Brand of the Year in 2014. 2024 even. I went back in time. M&S's turnaround is a marketing success story. It takes in diagnosis, insights, product and service innovation, and price and promotional excellence. And to tell that story, we have two of the key architects behind it. So please join me in welcoming Andy Hill and Robbie Black. Now, Andy, if I could start with you, I will take you back to 2018 if I could. In addition to the burning platform comment that the famously blunt Archie Norman said, he said this: "We don't have a God-given right to exist, and unless we change and develop this company the way we want to, in decades to come, there will be no M&S." What were identified as the key challenges at that time?
Well, thank you. It's a great question, isn't it? And if any of us have ever been part of an organisation at that time, and it really was a challenging time for the business, one of the big problems is sort of everywhere you look, there's something you want to fix and there's something you want to improve. And I suspect I'm preaching to the converted in this room, but I'm really glad that the steer from Archie to myself and the Insight team was go and listen to the customer, go and tell us what the customers are saying. And so through lots of different methodologies, we went and spoke to customers, but actually it could be summed up really simply. The first thing that customers said when we said, go on, tell us about M&S, is they said, I love M&S. And we sort of scratched our head and thought, well, what's the problem then? And we said, oh, well, tell us, why do you go to M&S? And they said, oh, no, I don't go there. And we're just around the corner, aren't we, from the British Library. And I called it at the time almost the British Library problem. Everyone likes the idea that the British Library exists, but no one actually really wants to have to spend their time there. Sorry if you're here from the British Library, but we talked to customers and we said, go on, tell us, what's getting in the way there? You love M&S. And they said, oh, well, we love M&S, but, and particularly on the food side of things, there were a number of challenges there. They said, I love M&S, but it's just too expensive. And when we dug into that, we knew we were a little bit more expensive than the competitors in real terms. They thought we were an order of magnitude more expensive than we actually were. So there was a real mismatch on price perception. But then on top of that, they said, it's not really a shop for people like me. It's a shop for my nan, not for me, was a genuine quote for customers. And then finally they said, it's not real food. It's sandwiches and it's ready meals and it's salads. And they're fine, but they're not for every day. They're for special occasions or for turkeys at Christmas time. And they said, therefore, I love M&S, but you're too expensive. You're not for me. And it's not real food for all the time. And really all of our work has been about tackling each one of those different barriers and sort of chipping away at those to change that customer perception and to get them back shopping in the stores again.
And you did, as I mentioned in my introduction. Staying with you, I mean, you talked about people's nan. My mum absolutely loved M&S and continues to this day. If anybody ever asked the origin of something that she'd bought and it was from M&S, she would rather confidently declare that it was from Marks. She always called it Marks's. I don't know if that's a Leeds thing. So there was a lot of residual affection. But as you've just said, having an affection and awareness doesn't necessarily translate. I mean, we hear a lot about customer centricity, even to the point of cliche. But how did you go about re-establishing it?
The first thing I'll say is I think you can only really do that in an organisation if it comes right from the top. And you've mentioned Archie already, and Archie and Stuart Machin at the time, who was the managing director of food and is now the CEO of the business, it's hardwired into who they are and the way they led the business. And actually, when we rewrote our customer company behaviours for colleagues, closer to customers and close to colleagues was in there as well. So how do we get closer to customers? And really practically every single one of us who work in the support centre, we don't call it the head office, has to get out to store at least 7 days a year and spend time working shoulder to shoulder at the shelf edge with our colleagues in store, talking to customers. But on top of that, within the support centre, there are a couple of things we've done. And I think the Insight team have done a brilliant job in so many ways. One of the things we do is 2 or 3 times a year, we've had a customer week. What we found is that by dripping in bits of insight every day or every week into the business, it was just getting a little bit lost in the general noise and the hundreds of emails and Teams messages and WhatsApps that people were receiving. By concentrating all that into a customer week, making a big thing of it, getting sponsorship from the leaders, running live events, drop-in centres, Insight team wearing T-shirts, posters around the building, all of the rest, we were able to really focus on the customer. And then on top of that, live customer groups in the office, getting our senior execs out to stores as well. It's brilliant to show people a graph, and that can be really persuasive for some people. Customer quotes are great, video vox pops, but there is nothing like having real live customers who are there in your office telling the truth to senior people for them to really listen. And I can remember one example with a senior commercial leader who we'd been talking to them about price and this price perception gap for some time. And I could see it just wasn't getting through. And then the penny really dropped when they sat opposite a customer who just said, well, I've never heard of that initiative. I've never heard of that thing that you were talking about. This was something which the senior leaders spent their whole life passionate about. But it took that customer sitting opposite them for them to really hear that it wasn't hitting home yet. So I think that drive from the top to get close to customers, that push to get out to the stores for any of us in retail, concentrating the effort around those customer weeks and just getting customers into the office. It's not rocket science, but it's really helped.
I mean, it is true, customer orientation. The data on a spreadsheet will only tell you a part of the story. You need to have that customer, the ostensible voice of the customer, the marketing department, obviously, in particular. Robbie, if I could turn to you, Andy's just talked about value and quality perceptions and how they needed to be re-established. You've hit upon consistency. We heard Jodie talking about the importance of consistency. Why is it important, particularly to M&S, particularly to M&S Food, to balance those two messages?
Yeah, I think it's vital. I think it was back in 2017, Mark Ritson in Marketing Week talked about M&S at the time as having this kind of magical equilibrium. He was obviously in 2017 saying we didn't have it, but if you look back at the 140-year history, when M&S has been at its absolute best, he was saying there's this magical equilibrium between quality and value. And I think he's absolutely right, those kind of twin tropes. But if you go back to that time when he was writing that, actually, clearly we were kind of out of kilter. But really interestingly, from a brand perspective, we were facing kind of diametrically opposed challenges on both sides of the business. So from a food perspective, we were arguably seen as too special and also too costly with it as well, as Andy talked about. On the clothing and home side of the business, actually, we weren't really seen as special enough. You know, we were trying to compete with the basics, but actually people thought that the quality wasn't there too. So out of kilter on both sides of the business, but ultimately the same challenge, which is to restore that kind of equilibrium between value and quality. For food, that meant making us more relevant to more people more often. And for fashion, home and beauty, actually, that meant just rebuilding the basics and then layering on those style credentials on top of that as well, building the quality back in.
And you brought back, I think it was in 2019, it's not just the brand platform, obviously, that was synonymous with M&S, and then, like many brands, what works goes, perhaps in some kind of shake-up or restructure of the marketing department, but you've stuck with it since. You've almost gone backwards to go forwards. I'll get into why you did that and what value it's offered to you in a moment, but let's have a look at it, shall we? If the tech doesn't fail, here we go.
The next train on platform 1 is succulent M&S Scottish salmon, perfectly pan-seared.
Ultra HD TV with trifle. The best ever from M&S, fruity compote and tons of vanilla custard.
Just can't wait to get home to
Cauliflower, bubbling in mature cheddar sauce. Classic M&S.
Detroit pizza with smoky sausage and pulled pork bits and a 3-cheese combo.
This is not just salmon. This is M&S salmon, drizzled in a rich hollandaise sauce. Et voila. This is not just food. This is M&S food. Dig in.
You've managed to do an amazing thing with that line. It's entered the lexicon. People use it as a preamble to make a point, as proved today by the fact that it was used for the title of this session. What part has it played in underlining your key points of differentiation?
Yeah, I think it's been massively important for us. Actually, a quick show of hands. Did anybody here not realise that we'd ever dropped it? Did you? Quick show of hands. Anyone think that we'd always had it? Yeah, it's quite a few hands there as well. We'd actually dropped it for 11 years. We've been through a period of 11 years where we hadn't used that line, but it's so deeply embedded in the vernacular, in the British psyche. I mean, even when I accepted the job at M&S, when we hadn't been using it for 10 or 11 years by that point, I was given, obviously, a Colin the Caterpillar cake by my then colleagues, but I was also given a good luck card that said, this is not just any job on the front of it as well. It's so sort of deeply embedded in British culture. So it's been hugely important. It was kind of dropped for what felt like seemingly good reasons at the time. It was felt as though it was actually putting the food on a little bit too much of a pedestal, that it was actually, as a brand, we were taking ourselves very seriously as well. It felt quite elitist. So when we brought it back, we really wanted to make it feel much, much more sort of democratic. It's kind of owned by the people, so putting it back into the mouths of the people made perfect sense. It also allowed us the opportunity to not take ourselves so seriously as well. I think that humour has been really important to us over the last 6 or 7 years. But when it comes to the importance of that line, it's so much more than just an end line. It's a benchmark by which we judge everything we do internally. So from a marketing perspective, a product will not receive any support whatsoever unless we can prove that it is not just a loaf of bread, for example. It's something we use throughout the entire process. You know, even when it comes to product development, it forces us to discover what that M&S point of difference actually is.
Drum roll.
Boom. I mean, that's a powerful line when it could act as a barometer, as a benchmark. Dare I use the P word, purpose almost to everything that you do. To probably incorrectly and dramatically paraphrase Jodie and the point she was making about consistent disruption. Andy, if I could come back to you, we've obviously heard about the consistency that you've hit upon definitely since 2018, but you haven't been afraid to embrace technology, digital media in particular. One example, you have, I'm reading this, I want to make sure I get it right, 600 stores manage their own TikTok accounts. Now, anybody who has any oversight or experience of corporate communications would probably balk at that. Like the risks involved of giving over a TikTok account to each and every store. But so what was the thinking behind that?
Well, actually, the story behind it goes back to 2020 and back to kind of March, April 2020 and the early days of the pandemic. And there was so much change happening. I suspect for any of us who were in the world of work at that point, we were grappling with huge change in our own lives, you know, suddenly working from home, working in a different way, working out what our role as a business was. And if you remember, most retail businesses outside of core essential businesses were shut for a short period of time. They gradually reopened. And we had a really live challenge that lots of our M&S food customers didn't know that we were still open. We were still open, but because in their minds, M&S will be a clothing retailer, we're a food retailer, were we open? And that was absolutely essential. It was essential for us as a business, it was essential for our colleagues, and to be honest, it was essential for people to be able to go out there and buy food as well, so there was a real cause there. And particularly our big stores in shopping centres, so if you think of the kind of Westfield stores, Blue Water, kind of Meadowhall, where the whole of the rest of the shopping centre was literally shut. And it was a really pragmatic decision at that point. And to be honest, at that point, everyone had so much else to worry about, quite rightly, that we weren't having lots of conversations with our corporate comms colleagues about it. We just said, we're going to go away and do it. So we're going to take our 10 biggest stores. They're going to set up initially at that point a Facebook site and just go out there and say we're open to their local communities and go on to local sites. Shopping centres often had their own channels and just say we're open. And then rapidly, over literally 24 hours, it moved from we're open to we're open. And now's a good time. We haven't got many queues. And yeah, hard to remember now, isn't it? But, we've got flour, we've got eggs, we've got loo roll, all the stuff that we were, as a nation's kind of scrabbling for. And then, again, 48 hours later, it wasn't 10 stores, it was 400 stores, because every single store wants to go out there and talk to their local community. And we put some guardrails in there, we put some templates, we put some communication, and particularly at that point, we had to be really clear about talking about essential products and really giving people the basic information about here's when we're open, here are the hours when, if you're working with the NHS, you can come and shop with us. And then through 2020, as everything opened up, actually what we found, and if you click on the next slide, you'll see some examples of where we are now, our stores started talking about product. This is some Facebook sites here. And what we found is that an individual store talking to 500 people locally in a really engaging way, times that by 400, 500 stores, had really serious reach. So we're now at a point where every single week we have about 2.75 million impressions there. And the engagement rate is around 5.5%. So it is significantly above what most people are getting in terms of online engagement. The next slide there shows some TikTok examples and stores move from Facebook onto TikTok. And to come back to your trust question, I think one more click gets it animating as well there. When you come back to trust, what we really realized is we've got 60,000 colleagues in store and we trust them every single day of the year to go and serve 20 million customers. And the reach then to trust them to talk online isn't that far when you look at it that way. And of course, we have some guardrails. We do monitor it, but we don't sign anything off before it goes live. And actually, the number of times in which we've had to go out and say, well, we're not quite sure that's right, we've got to come back, has been very minimal. And it's been really the sort of things that marketeers care more about in terms of, oh, actually, Percy Pig probably shouldn't be doing that, rather than the sort of things that actually become a nothing too drastic.
What was Percy doing?
Don't want to know.
He was dancing a little bit close to the meat aisle, which is... it's kind of that's a little challenge, but nothing worse than that. So, but really, honestly, you look at the images you've got there. Whether it's pistachio products, whether it's those cereals with a real reduction in ultra-processed ingredients, whether it's the strawberry sundae we've heard from already, there is something really compelling around not just working with professional creators and influencers, which we do, not just putting out really polished kind of advertising on our own channels, which we do, but actually backing that up with our colleagues in store as well. And for so many people, if they see Sue, who they know from their local store, saying a product is really brilliant, they will go in and buy it in a much more compelling way.
Again, to temporarily resort to cliche, it is an authentic way to tell your stories, but also a way, certainly when it comes to food retailers, to underline the place that you have in each and every one of those communities. Robbie, if I could come to you, in terms of storytelling, let's continue with that. You've lent into telling the M&S foods and clothing story in various different ways on traditional and digital media through ITV's Dress the Nation and the YouTube show Like That on the clothing side, and Cooking with the Stars, the ITV show that you fund. Before I again ask you the question why and to what effect, so let's have a look at Cooking with the Stars in action.
I can't stop.
Fire!
Welcome to a brand new series of Cooking with the Stars.
Cooking as a competition makes me feel very nervous.
here to look pretty on a screen for a week or two. I'm here to win.
This is not the cafe on Albert Square. I need to produce high-end grub, and I'm bricking it.
We won it last year, and I definitely want to win it again this year.
To say that I'm competitive is probably an understatement. In Jamaica, we come to win.
I like to win. I do not like to be second, and that is true. I'm coming to win.
Perfection.
Oh, 10 out of 10. Thank you.
This is really good for me. Love it.
This is an incredibly accomplished dish.
Feeling panicked.
Get out my kitchen, come on!
I'm gonna put it on, just chilling.
Pick up the plate.
No.
That's really bad.
Oh, God.
Could go awfully wrong. Oh, so stressful.
At this point in the recipe, don't forget to scream.
Thought we were going to see a full episode.
Yeah, I did too, for a second. Yeah.
It's getting quite. Who won? Who won? It's it's going beyond product placement. Is that obviously? I mean, why did you do it, and what does good look like?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think for us, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I think we were so clear about the issues that we needed to solve. And actually, I think Mark Ritson last year, talking about M&S in a slightly more positive light in 2024, he talked about the team's sort of willingness to ignore all of the silly debates about media and labels that were being used and actually try everything in service of the brand. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. There's also a lot of truth that behind the scenes, we know exactly what's working for us and what isn't. We've got really robust econometric modeling. So in this instance, I think, in terms of what good looks like, ultimately, I think everything that we do is always in marketing is always going to be judged by how much of a profitable return it drives for the business as well. But the truth is here, I think we can also look at how it changed perceptions. One of the things that Andy talked about is how we needed, especially in food, we needed to be seen as much more of a credible destination for larger weekly shops. We needed to be more relevant more often to more people. And so judging the success of something like that, we saw a plus 15 percentage point increase in people agreeing with that statement that they saw M&S as a credible place to do a weekly shop once they'd seen the programme than before as well. So really being really clear, I think, on the issues that we're trying to solve and then being really innovative with the media channels that we're using to try and solve it, I think, and measuring everything.
Well, we're hurtling towards time, and I think my microphone has been... There it is. Anyway, we're hurtling towards the end of our session, so I'm going to ask you both one final question, and it's to look forward, really. If there's one thing that you need to do to future-proof and continue this success at M&S, what is it you're looking for? Let me start with you, Robbie.
So I'll probably go back to what I was saying before. I think Mark was absolutely right. That kind of equilibrium between quality and value, I think, is so fundamentally important to us. So that I think is the main goal. I think from an advertising, from a communications point of view, this is not just food. I think as long as we have that at the heart of everything we're doing in the business, I think it really allows us to keep true to that. So for me, it's that balance between quality and value.
I think for me, to add to that, we will do it by staying true to quality and value, but we'll be able to stretch into more missions. So I think we're really in a very strong place in areas like, on-the-go food for gifting, for special occasions. But actually, if I was to talk to people in the room here and say, where are you going to go for a top-up shop? Where are you going to go for a big shop? For most people, M&S is still a bit of a reach. But if you look at some of our newly refurbished shops and some of our larger food halls, we're starting to see customers use us that way. And I think the big opportunity for M&S is really to become a shopping list retailer where people are becoming used to going for more and more of those kind of top-up shops, regular shops, and dinner for tonight.
Both huge and very important objectives. I'll add one to call back to what you said. Let's keep Percy away from the meat aisle and everything will be okay. There is, as I said at the beginning, it's a fantastic story, and I hope as an M&S shopper, that you continue to drive the growth that you have. I know my mum would agree with me. She still wears her Marx's clothes and buys her Marx's food as a badge of honour. Robbie and Andy, thank you very much for telling the story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.